Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from San Antonio, USA, Dr. Kruti Lehenbauer. Kruti, welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to speak to me. Dr. Lehenbauer is the owner of Analytics TX LLC. She's a business analytics consultant. She's also a guaranteed growth consultant, a fractional chief data analytics officer also. So Kruti, before we talk about analytics, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Well, I started growing up thinking that I always wanted to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the path that I followed first. So I went the whole 9 yards with pursuing academics, did my PhD, and then have been teaching since 2003 is when I started teaching.
Right.
And last year, I decided that, you know what, maybe it was time to just do consulting on a full-time basis.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had so much fun working with a lot of my business students. So that was a big motivator. And so that's what I do now is full-time consulting.
Fantastic. So let's talk about Analytics DX. Help me understand what is the type of work you're doing at Analytics DX and the services you offer.
So what we do basically is to help people look at the hidden treasures in their data. And the reason I use the word hidden treasures is because most of the companies these days will call themselves data-driven, and they are.
Correct.
They are using the data. But the problem is they may not necessarily delve into the causes of the data. If they do some kind of a regressive analysis, they may not necessarily have the forecasting capacities. And I'm talking above and beyond the artificial intelligence and large models. I'm mostly talking about the crux, the statistics that goes behind, oh, you had a spike in your data. What caused that spike? Those are the questions that I bring to the table, talk with the executives or the owners of a business, and work with them to identify if they're identifying the correct thing. Because sometimes it is about having the right information given to the right person at the right time. But what I would like to add to that well-known thing is in the right manner. So that's basically what we do. And we help a large variety of clients. We have helped banks and financial institutions, small businesses, manufacturing, sales. I'm actually working right now with a artificial intelligence company and trying to help them figure out how to sort the data that they're collecting out. And so it's a fun journey because I get to do different things.
Absolutely. And it's been spoken so many times that data is the new oil. So you're obviously figuring out how to mine all that oil.
Yes, getting your hands dirty. That's
Absolutely. Well said. So Kruti, can you walk us through your process of developing data strategies and how you approach a new data analytics project?
Sure. That's actually the funnest part because I first learn about the business, find out what the key decision makers are, find out if they're using any key metrics and how they're collecting those metrics for their decision making. Then I request access to some select data based on whatever objectives that are set forth by the people that are hiring me. And based on those objectives, sometimes it's easy because they might think they want to look at the sales data. But then you go, wait, no, we need to look at the pricing data because as an economist, I can tell you that the price will drive, the elasticity of the sales and the elasticity of the demand have to be considered and not just, the cost. So then I start delving into that data, come up with what I think would be a potential benefit. So before I run any analysis, just based on, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I have like this God-given gift where I can look at a large data set and I can see the trends and, So I'm like I said, it's God-given. But I have worked on developing it. So I am able to tell them that here's treasures lying and you're not really working on that. Let's see if we can work with that. And sometimes, depending on the size of the company or the size of the project that they want to work on, that's where the guaranteed growth consultant part comes in. Because it's like, I make money when you make money. I'm vested in this. I am a part of the journey. And like it or not, once I'm hired, one of the things that I'll do is, even after the project is completed or my contract is over, I'll still reach out and be like, hey, how's it going? Do we need to tweak anything? And not as a part of, oh, let's start another contract, but rather, I know I bring value to your table and we can all benefit from it.
Amazing. That's such a powerful and valuable insight that you provide to your clients. My next question is that how do you ensure the quality and accuracy of the data analysis that you are able to provide?
So one of the things that, as a statistician by training, as an economist by training, I know what trends to typically look for. So before I perform detailed data analysis, which is where there's all kinds of complicated modeling, I do what is called a descriptive statistical analysis. I come up with what I can see. I set the hypotheses based on what I see. And then I test those hypotheses on multiple chunks of data. And if it is not consistently, meeting the standard, then that's when the real mining starts, right? Like you get in there and you're like, okay, there's 60,000 records and 200 variables. Let's find out why this is tripping or why it's not working. But I absolutely love that part. So
how amazing. How amazing. And the other question that I had for you was that what are some common misconceptions people have about data analytics that you encounter when you're working with companies?
That's a very interesting question. So this is not only limited to companies. This is also something that I've seen in students, in a lot of seasoned professionals. One, there is a fear of data. A lot of people grow up thinking that they're not good at math. And they just assume that means that the data is just basically the scary entity. The second thing is that we live in a world where getting things like KPIs or, sales tracks or rate of return, that's easy to do because Google Analytics will throw that out at you. HubSpot Analytics will send you the report. But what does it mean? Correct. And that's where the fear comes in. That's where a super confident person, you put them in front of a data sheet and it's like, it's magic because they're just like, this makes no sense to me. It's like, well, it's your business. But that's why I think people need what I like to call a data translator. So someone like me would go in there and say, all right, look, I use regression analysis and logistic modeling for this. You don't need to know any of that. What you do need to know is that based on your data, this is what we are seeing. That this is the probability of your success if you do this. This is the probability of your failure if you do this. And we can use this information to create a project management design. We can use this to create the optimal way that you should either price your product or how to cut costs in your company or how to hire or restructure the company such that you don't lose your most valuable players. So in a way, I work across departments. I help with the marketing, I help with ops, I help with HR. But the reason is that most people don't realize that the same data set can give all these amazing insights because they're all related. That data doesn't just randomly get generated. It's generated because of a series of decisions that are correctly made in order to get those outputs. So
amazing. My next question is that, how do companies really evaluate the impact of being able to use some of the data effectively based on your guidance?
There is always some pushback. There is always this thing about, but we've always done it this way.
Hmm.
But the easiest thing, and this is going to sound very business-like, but I think that's the purpose.
Yeah.
It's like if you see that you can do better with what you're already spending, why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Especially if you're not doing anything that is damaging anybody else. We're not making any unethical decisions based on this data. We are simply saying, here's where you're leaving money on the table. Like I remember one of the people I worked with was like, well, I want to discount these products. And I'm like, those are your best selling products. Those are the things people will buy, even if they were priced higher. Why give that discount? And I mean, and sounds silly, but it was like a little spa that I'm talking about. And they were like, well, we want to, if you buy 9 services, we give the 10th one for free. I'm like, look, people come here to relax. This is a luxury. You don't want to give the 10th one for free.
Yeah, that's not really relevant.
You give them a little towel, and that will be just as good as a $150 service that you want to give away for free. So those are the kinds of things where seeing what they're leaving on the table and pointing it out to them, because when I think about people in the C-suite, they're making so many decisions and they're slammed with so much information. As long as the numbers look good, they don't delve into it. And what I like to tell people is, hey, it's just as important to know why you're doing well as it is to know why you did badly. Because everybody learns from failure, but learning from success is the formula for continued, growth.
Well said. Well said. What a great example. Thank you. My next question, Kruti, is that, there's always this constant question of data security and privacy.
Yes.
Now, for someone who works so extensively with data, is this something that keeps coming up when you talk to people?
It does.
Okay.
Now, with a lot of the smaller businesses, they are less worried about it on their end. I make sure that things are secured at my end. When it comes to some bigger businesses or banks, that's where things get tricky. Same thing with government data. Because if it is not public data, then it has personal information in it. And that's a constant risk. So one of the things I often do, eventually someday I'll have my own server. But right now, there are some companies which I trust, and they have those systems in place. And so I either work with them for those clients or use their systems so that the client data is not compromised in any way. And then if I'm using it on my computer at my, for the programming and the modeling, I make sure to delete or remove any personally identifiable information. Because sometimes, as a data analyst, I don't really care what your social security number is, I just need to know maybe your first name and last name for other purposes, like your gender, ethnicity, etc. But I don't really need your private information.
Well said.
So I double secure it in that way. I'll delete it at my end. And for the final files, I just use servers, or the companies themselves have secured systems. And I just go in there and work as I need to.
Very well said. And based on all the work that you are doing, what, in your view, are some of the emerging trends in the world of data analytics that you believe will shape the future of the industry?
Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I am super excited about the potential that AI has brought to the table.
Yeah.
So there are people who are unskilled, who refuse to learn to use the new AI skills. And I think those people might end up being obsolete.
Correct.
That's okay. If they're unskilled and they are trying to learn to use the AI skills, then those people can be taught. Because thanks to AI, you can write a Python code for something within minutes. Problem is, if you're unskilled yourself, you don't know if it's accurate or not. But the fact that you're able to write that means you're teachable. It's like that's where all those online courses and trainings are just going to bloom even more.
Right.
Because people are like, okay, I ran a regression, but I don't know what a regression means. And And just understanding that. So skilled people who are refusing to use AI, those are the ones that break my heart. Those are the ones that, like, you have the skills, you have this, why this resistance to change? If people had done that 100 years ago, we would still be driving around in horse carriages and never would have moved on to cars, So, and then of course, there's this ideal person where their skill, their experience, and they are leveraging the speed that artificial intelligence is contributing to human intelligence. As long as this is done within ethical modes and bounds, and there's no moral hazard that's being created, I think we are fine. And if those things get created, we just need to we figured out a way to deal with the internet threats.
Yeah.
So it's just like everything evolves. And I think that if I had to say one thing to people, I'd be like, do not be afraid of change. Embrace it. Learn to make it a part of your life without devoting your whole life to it. You don't have to change yourself, but you can make yourself more productive, more efficient, happier, more satisfied, because what could take 5 hours of coding now can take 15.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. The other question that, when I was preparing to talk or chat with you, from the perspective of a client who is seeing an incredible amount of change in the landscape, not only of their business, but also in data, how do you hold their hands and how do you guide them?
So, like I said, my previous life is a teacher. And even though I was a professor and all that, in my heart, that is what I call myself. I'm a teacher.
Right.
And I'm a consultant now, but I'm still a teacher. And therefore, my role is not just to be like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be done, because nobody connects with that. I like to be the translator. I like to be the person who is there for them. I'm in their corner, and their success is what adds meaning to what I do. And would I like to work with corporations? Sure, eventually, but that's not where I'm, trying to connect with people and be like, oh, can your big company hire me? No, because those people have other people. I want to help the average business owner, the average investor, the average decision maker, and help them see how great they're capable.
And you gave me a few minutes back a great example of the massage place that you were helping. Do you have any other interesting example of, say, a startup who you have supported, and how did your intervention help them?
Well, one of my students had started up a company right after COVID, which everybody was, in 2020, 2021, the fear was everything's going to fail. But he had this amazing design and the patent on it for cleaning large scale buildings. So like schools, and so disinfecting them. And he actually did this as a part of his school project under my guidance because he was doing his PhD. But I was there helping with designing proposals for investors. I couldn't officially be a part of it because I was his teacher. But in terms of like personal satisfaction, that was pretty cool to watch him grow. And I think he sold the company recently because it was doing that well.
Absolutely, must have been. And the other question that I had was that, as someone who's built companies and who's worked for large companies, there is always this thing in leadership that I have somebody who will do the analytics for me.
Yes.
Right. And that somebody will come and guide me. My question is that, do people need in-house talent, or can they completely rely on you? And where does responsibility lie, in your opinion, for the analytics part within a company?
I think that the responsibility should lie with the C-suite. So that's my first take on it. having data teams that head departments or people who head data teams within departments makes silos. So one of the blogs that I have written, it's called the DARE method, DARE, which is Data Analytics for Results Enhancement. And in that model, I'm saying that we have the C-suite that makes the decisions, fixes the KPIs, and then sends it out to the departments where they do their own data analysis. Data analysis needs to be brought in front of the in front of the C-suite. It has to be a flow rather than a one-directional thing,
right?
Because then the CEOs can make those decisions. Now, you asked about whether in-house talent is required, or in-house talent would be great. But when it comes down to it, certain decisions can be made at the top, and then the in-house talent can be the one that constantly works on those. And that's one of the reasons why I offer my services as a fractional CDO, is because I can help set up those systems. I can help identify what they need to look for, when, what, or at what point should they call me back? Right? Okay, if this number goes below 0.2, we need to talk, right? But for the most part, most of it can be managed either by an independent individual that they hire, or most of it can be given to the same teams that work with the CTOs, the technology officers, or the CFOs, depending on which region we are working with, or the CIOs. So a lot of it, once it is set up, can be distributed around. And that's where someone like me on a fractional basis is perfect, because I just need to go in so many hours a month and look at whether are all the ducks still swimming correctly? And if not, what do we need to fix?
How interesting. How interesting. So we've got time for one more question. And this question is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. A lot of them will be either startup entrepreneurs or aspiring startup entrepreneurs. From your perspective as a CDAO and someone who understands analytics so well, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want them to take back?
Okay, so I'm going to talk as a data person, or a statistics person here.
Absolutely.
There's always a cost-benefit analysis that we all do when we make the decision to start something.
Correct.
It is usually when we find that our benefits of not starting something are far greater than the costs. It might cost us time with our family, cost us a lot of stress and anguish because we're worried about losing our jobs. We become puppets to some entity. And if that is not making us happy, I know it's going to sound like a very new age thing, but we only have one life to live. And we owe it to ourselves and to our families to live it happily. And depending on people's goals, everybody's view of what they want to do looks different. Sometimes when we take that chance, when we believe in ourselves, when we risk things, that's when we are going to shine. And the second thing I would say is, don't give up. Nothing ever happened overnight. You didn't learn to read overnight. You didn't learn to write overnight. So actually, it's funny you say that, because just yesterday I told one of my children this. I was like, from the day you were born, it took a whole year until you were able to walk. It works the same way with businesses. You have to grow, you have to learn, you have to network, you have to believe in people, believe in yourself, and keep going. Don't just give up after 6 months because, nothing worked out. In fact, 72% of the companies that shut down because right before they were about to hit their peak. Because networking and all of that, it takes time to catch up. It doesn't happen overnight. So don't give up. Have faith in yourself. And there's always something out there that's going to make you feel the way you deserve to feel.
Correct. Well said. And on that note, Kruti, and your wonderful lessons, understand the cost-benefit analysis before you start anything new. Second, you said was don't give up. And then you said have faith, because as they say, when you're running into trouble, this too shall pass.
Yes.
But, Thank you for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for talking to me about analytics and data at such great length. I learned many, many new things from you today. Thank you for sharing everything that you did. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.